पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितं पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यास विशालबुद्धे फुल्लारविन्दायातपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्ना परिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुता स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ज्ञानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा। देवाय तस्मै नमः। एकं शास्त्रं देवकी पुत्रगीतम् एको देवो देवकी पुत्र एव एको मन्त्रस्तस्य नामानि यानि कर्माप्येकं तस्य देवस्य सेवा। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So we are doing this verse 2.31. Swadharmam api chaveksha navikampitum arhasi Dharmyadhi yudhat sreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate swadharmam api chavekshya na vikampitum arhasi. Dharmyadhi yudhat sreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. So watch out for these two sandhis here. This one and this one. Final T. Final, these are the two most distracting or confusing sandhis with the final T. So dharmyat he becomes dharmyad he, and yudhat shreya becomes yudhat shreya. So that's even I was told I pronounced that badly. Yudhat shreya. So it's yudhat shreya, so that T and the sh become ch. Anyway, yudhat shreya, as long as you know what it stands for, even if your pronunciation is bad. So swadharmam api cha aveksha na vikampitum arhasi. So this first line is almost exactly according to the proper word order. Tvam swadharmam api cha aveksha na tvam na vikampitum arhasi. Kshatriyasya dharmyad yudhati anyat shreya na vidyate. So for a kshatriya, there is no greater benefit or no greater good. Shreya, the good, beneficial, more beneficial than a holy war, than a righteous war. So I just wanted to say here, Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that this is a transition, that there's a transitional verse here, because on the one hand, and this transition is something that is going on all the way through the Bhagavad Gita, at least through the first few chapters, where Krishna is emphasizing the differences between jnana and karma. So here, karma and swadharma are the same thing, for all intents and purposes, at least on the lowest level. So here, what Vishwanath Chakravarti said was that Atmano Nasha Bhavat Vadhat Vikampitum Bhetum Narhasi Swadharma Mapicha Veksha Navikampitum Arhasi Iti Sambandha. So the Sambandha here, the relationship between the previous verses and this one, what is the connection? What's the Krishna is going off into another topic here, but it's not without a relationship. It's not without some connection. So the first one is that he was saying before, this was the Jnana part or the Sankhya part, and now here's the Yoga part. So the Yoga part means any kind of action. So the Swadharmam api chaveksha. So here the first one was that you should see that knowing Atmano nasha bhavadeva vadhad vikampitum bhetum narhasi. So here he took vikampitum to mean bhetum. So bheta means to fear. So you should not fear. In other words, you should not tremble from the killing of your the killing that's going to take place in this war, because the atmano nasha abhavat eva, because there is no destruction, there's no destruction of the soul. Nasha abhavat, there's an abhava of nasha, there's no abhava, meaning non-existence. Nasate vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sataha. This word abhava is an important word in logical thinking, because it means the absence of something. So you can argue from absence is also a proof, right? That the absence of something can also, at least it's not the most definitive proof, but it's definitely a proof. But here in this particular case, it's the knowledge that we're basing on. So the action is based on the knowledge. You should not be fearful about either killing or being killed, because the soul does not die. And this, of course, is a big issue in the modern world because people don't believe in the soul anymore. They only believe in the body. And so it leads to all kinds of aberrations in human society where good things and bad things result. But certainly the one thing that comes from is inordinate fear of death. Because if this is your only life, there's an inordinate fear of death. So the second part here, he says, is that now there's going to be action. So here, vikampitum arhasi. And the second part is that your swadharmam api cha aveksha. So is what he's focusing really here on here is the api and the cha. So you're seeing that your dharma. So now it's a question of now you don't hesitate to engage in the battle. So that knowledge has had neither to fear nor to hesitate. That was two of the meanings that came from there. Now, when we're looking at Baladev also, so Baladev, we went through that rather lengthy, difficult set. Where are we now? We're already in the next verse. So, sorry, I seem to have lost my place. Oh, I went too far. Okay, so now Baladev. So we didn't go through all of Baladev. We have to go through the rest of Baladev today. But I do want to go through that sentence, that long sentence there, because it was a good sentence. It was a bit long, so I'm fearful that not everybody was able to see that sentence very well. See if I can make this image a bit bigger. Let's see if I put it at 2. All right, a bit bigger there. All right, here's Baladev. So, evam paramatma jnanopayogitvat ado jivatma jnanam sarvan prati tolyena upadishya. So what I've said here, what I was saying to you, so now when you face a sentence like this, there are natural breaks that take place, and these natural breaks are provided by the verb forms, because verbs generally tend to be at the end of the thought process in Sanskrit. So here in this sentence, it's a long sentence, but it has these natural breaks. Here's a gerund, upadishya. Here's a present participle, vadishyan. Here's here is infinitive, and here is your final verb, aha. So everything is leading up to aha because this is an introductory verse. It's going into it's taking us into the verse here. Right, swadharmam api cha aveksha. So here we had this, I didn't put this, vikampitum. Anyway, I'll get those later. All right, so evam paramatma jnanopayogitvat ado jivatma jnanam sarvan prati tolyena upadishya. So the first thing he's done here is upadishya, having instructed. So this gerund, this is what's talking about what went before. So what has he done? He has instructed. And whom has he instructed that to? He's done that to everybody. Sarvan prati. So although he's talking to Arjuna, his instructions are universal. They're intended for everyone. And here he adds tolyena, means that they are done to everyone equally. Tulya, tolya. Tolya means equality. So equality, because it's tulya is a balance. So tula is a balance. So tulya is equal. So it's used in comparisons. You have to go and look into the manual in the section about comparisons, and you'll see this word being used. Tulya, tulitam tulayam, that the things are being measured, or so measuring equality. The tula is the word for a scale. taraju in Hindi. But in Bengali, they still use the word tula. All right, so towards everyone, he's given what instruction equally? He's given the instruction of Jivatma Jnanam. And he did this ado in the beginning. So this is the first instruction. The verses from 11 to 30, those are all giving knowledge about the distinction between the body and the soul. In various different ways, Krishna has been emphasizing that one point in the first 20 verses of his lecture. So why has he done it? Now here he gives this, and this is a Hetu Panchami. So Hetu Panchami here coming at the beginning. So quite often we have the Hetu Panchami coming at the end. So either coming at the end or at the beginning. But Evam Paramatma Jnanopayogitvat. So this because, and so because what? Because it is useful, upayogi. Upayogi means usefulness. Upayujyate. It is useful. It is appropriate again. Because it is useful for Paramatma Jnana, for knowledge of the Supreme Soul. Right? So now in the first 20 verses, Krishna never mentioned Paramatma. So the Advaitavadins and those who follow the Advaitavadin tradition from Shankara, they don't make a distinction between, or sometimes they feel that the verse that for them there's only one Atma, and that Atma, the individual Atma and the Paramatma are one and the same thing. So when they talk about the Atma in the first 20 verses, they're talking about the universal Atma. That's why that Sarvagatam, that word was discussed. Sarvagatam, all pervading. So for the Vaishnavas, and Baladev went into some extent in that verse to say that Sarvagatam means all pervading in the body. So here he's saying that this Jivatma Jnanam that he's instructed equally to everyone in the beginning. Why in the beginning? Because this is like a prerequisite. Without knowledge of this Jivatma Jnanam, without Jivatma Jnanam, how will Paramatma Jnanam come about? So the essential thing is to have Paramatma Jnanam. So this is also applies in the case of whether one is an Advaita Vadin or whether one is a Bhakti Vadin. In both cases, you first have to start with yourself, and then from there you develop into, what is the point of knowing about God if you don't have any knowledge of your own spiritual nature. So if you think that you're just this material body, then God doesn't really enter very much into the picture at all. All right, so that's the first thing here. So in the beginning, Krishna has instructed Arjuna, in the Atma Jnanam, because it's useful for getting knowledge of the Supreme Soul, and he's done this equally to everyone. It's a knowledge that is for everyone, it's universal. But now, sa nishtan. So this word nishtha is interesting here. What is exactly he's referring to? Nishtha, of course, everybody in the Vaishnava school, we all know this from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that nishtha is a particular stage, and it's a very important stage in sadhana bhakti, in the development of prem, that after anartha nivritti comes nishtha. But nishtha doesn't necessarily, that's a kind of a technical term that we use in Vaishnavism, but nishtha just generally means to be fixed. So to have fixity, or to have, well, sometimes we use the word strong faith for this idea of nishtha, but it means to be fixed, to be solidly situated. So here it means basically one who is solidly situated in Jivatma Jnanam. In other words, one who has taken the conclusions of that. So this is, again, in the process that we're talking about here in the Bhagavad Gita. We started with this Atma Jnanam in 11 to 30. Now we're going on to something else. And this is going to be repeated again in chapter 3, at the beginning of chapter 3, where Krishna talks about Sankhya for the Jnana Yoginam and Yoga for the Karma Yoginam. Right? So for the karmis, and for people who are following the path of action, they are karma yogi. And then you have the Sankyanam, Karma Yogena, Jnana Yogena, Sankyanam, Karma Yogena, Yoginam. So you have these two division of Sankhya and Yoga that is made in the Bhagavad Gita. And that division of Sankhya Yoga applies more or less and to the of the 6 darshans. You have Sankhya philosophy and you have Yoga philosophy, but they are divided also as theory and practice. So in the case of Jnana and Yoga, you have theory and practice. And so the most important thing in the Bhagavad Gita is really the practice. But that practice has to be based on a theory, and the basis of the theory is Jivatma Jnana. Everything begins there. So now he says, so Sanishtan, so let's just say that Sanishtan, so people who are fixed in that knowledge, or at least on the basis of that knowledge, have certain action. So now that action is going to be what? What needs to be told to those people? So Sanishtan Prati. So this is more particular here. This is a little bit less general knowledge. This is for people who have, let's say, passed grade 1. And that grade 1 was in chapters in verses 11 to 30. So Sanishtan Prati Nishkamataya Anutishtani Karmani Harid Vishuddhi Sahakritam Atma Jnana Nishtam Nishpadayanti Iti Vadishyan. Okay, so now there's an iti there. So we have to again make a little bit of a separation. So iti Vadishyan. This is his intention. This is a present participle. I mean, excuse me, a future participle. So future participles, you take the future stem, vadishya, and you add onto it, you're adding on the same endings as in the present participle of the parasmaipada. But this is a parasmaipada. Of course, you'd have different ones if it was the atmanepada. So vadishyan, he is going to say, so Krishna is intending to say this. So we're in a transitional verse. We're going from one thing. He's completed the instructions in Atma Jnanam, and now he's going to tell us about something else. And this instruction is going to be for those who are sanishta, like Arjuna. So what is the instruction? So the instruction is that here, the main parts of this sentence, the karmani is the subject, and nishpadayanti is the verb, and the object is Atma Jnana Nishtam. And what is that? So now you have 2 adjectives. So the adjectives are, for karmani, are nishkamataya anutishtitani. And the adjectives for Atma Jnana Nishtam are hrid vishuddhi sahakritam. So here, this word nishtam here and the word nishtam here, they're not exactly the same. But it's still, you could say that here in the first nishtan means that they have, let's say, gotten to the first step of this knowledge. And so they are acting. So towards those people, to those people who have heard, let's say, who have passed lesson 1, who have heard the first instructions, for them now, it is to be understood that there's a particular thing that he wants to say to them. So what does he want to say to them? He wants to say that karmani nishpadayanti atma jnana nishtam, that works, activities can produce fixity in knowledge of the self. But what kind of actions? It's not all kinds of actions, but it's actions that are anushtitani, that are carried out or that are performed nishkamataya, with nishkamata, with the quality of freedom from desire. So works that are performed without any desire produce atma jnana nishtam. What kind of atma jnana nishtam? So there we look at the adjective, hrid vishuddhi sahakritam. So now this is very important idea. This is a very basic idea, especially it's a basic idea that's Shankaracharya puts a great deal of emphasis on, right? that we're looking to get to this Atma Jnana Nishtam. We want to have Jnanam, because Jnanam leads to liberation. Karma itself does not lead to liberation. Karma leads to other things. So now here he wants to say that what his intention, Krishna's intention here, is that he wants to tell about that karma, if it's performed without desire, it leads to fixity in the knowledge of the self. But how does that come about? Hrid Vishuddhi Sahakritam. Sahakritam, it comes simultaneously with, it is done simultaneously with purification of the heart. So Hrid Vishuddhi Sahakritam is an adjective there describing this Atma Jnana Nishtam. So Atma Jnana Nishta, this Atma Jnana has to be produced from self-purification. You can't, without self-purification, one is not liberated. Okay? As long as there are impurities in the heart, you're not going to be able to recognize the self. So this is the basic philosophy of yoga, right? The basic philosophy of yoga is to become, well, in the Yoga Sutra, the idea is that you are becoming freed from all impurities by what? By fixing the mind. So any distractions in the mind, those are all the result of impurity. So the whole process of yoga, whether beginning all the way from its very beginnings in karma, in external karmas, in the practice of your swadharma. So practice of swadharma is really for everybody. And then the intense practices of yoga. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the first 6 chapters, you see the development from instruction in performing one's own duties all the way up to the practice of yoga and meditation, and actually concentrating the mind on the Supreme Being. All right, so now that's what his intention. That's the second part of this sentence then. Now the third part here is tasyam pratitim utpadayetum. So now this is the third part really, and this is going with all the way up to aha, because this is the intention now. So this is also intention, this is also intention, but this is the intention of what he is going to be doing. He is going to be saying this, he's going to be explaining this, but before he does that, he has to utpadayetum pratitim. Tasyam, in that, right? So in that Atma Jnana Nishtam, he has to produce faith. He has to produce faith in this process of karma. Right? So so he's doing that. He says, in order to produce, so utpadayetum, nishpadayetum, those are both from the same pada dhatu. They're both causatives, but this one has a nish prefix and this one has the ut prefix. So the ut prefix and the nish prefix, the difference is basically that, what can I say, nishpadayetum, that there's not really that much difference, I would say, at this point. You can try to find a difference, but the idea is basically to produce. So here he wants to produce faith in it. And the only thing I can think that this it refers to is Atma Jnana Nishtam. But I would say more, it's the entire process here. This entire process of how this entire sentence, that really the tasyam refers to the whole thing, that this whole process of nishkama karma. So, but before he can tell him about nishkama karma, he tells him about sakama karma. So sakama taya anushtitanam karmanam. Now he's got nishashti vibhakti. Kamya phala pradatvam. So this is the end of it here. So he's telling him that the desired result, it gives, pradatvam, it has the quality of giving the result of the desired result. What has the property of giving desired result? It's karmas. Which karmas? The karmas that are performed with desire, sakamataya. So here we have the words nishkama and sakama have been introduced. This is the beginning, first time we see those words in the Bhagavad Gita, and of course those are going to be pervading the Bhagavad Gita everywhere. All right, so that was the purpose of the verse. And I've also did that sentence twice. I hope that this time it was more clear and that you get the whole idea. But in terms of sentence structure here, not only do we have this idea of the sentence structure, these breaks where you have the particular verb form, and that's logical because the verb form usually ends. The final verb here is aha. And so the aha comes at the very end, right? Dwabhyam really does, the dwabhyam is together with aha. So here you have, but the use of these nishkamataya and the use of the twat, paramatma jnana yogi twat, and then here kamya phala pradatvam, sakamataya. So these kinds of words, these abstract nouns, these are really super important. And you have to, they're usually in Tritiya Vibhakti or in Panchami Vibhakti, indicating some kind of a causal relationship in general. But here, of course, not always, because this one here, but it's a really a good way of shortening, of taking a compound word and making it into a subordinate clause, really. Kamya phala pradatvam. It has the property of giving the fruit that is desired. Right, so let's just go on here. We didn't do it. So yudham khalu kshatriyasya niya. This is, oops, I still didn't correct this. Oh, Lord. I'll change that. Okay, so niyatam agnihotradivat vihitam. Now that's it. So here it's a very saying that agnihotradivat. So generally speaking, shastra vidhi. So vihitam is the past participle from vidha, dha dhatu, and vidha. So this is a very important word. I have a whole section in the manual about vidha, because vidhi ling. So when I talk about vidhi ling, then you have to understand this concept of vidhi. And there are many different things that, for instance, the potential passive participle, and other ways. There are 4 different ways of giving vidhis, general instructions. So the general instruction is in the Shastras for Agnihotra. And now this is particularly important because in the 3rd chapter, we're going to see that Krishna starts to talk about sacrifice. And in the 3rd and 4th chapters, discussion of sacrifice and the evolution of sacrifice is a very, very important principle. And it's perhaps the basic principle of Dharma and the basic principle of the entire karma yoga process, and also the basic principle of sadhana, if we can look at it that way. That the sadhana bhakti also is a karma in one sense, because it entails activities of the senses, right? Rishikena, Rishikesha Sevana. So the activities, and this is the word Rishikesha, we saw already a couple of times in the 1st chapter there. So the word Rishikesha is kind of significant in the whole, in the idea of karma yoga, because it's Rishikesha Sevanam. Rishikena, with using the senses to serve the master of the senses. So Vihita comes, and we have Vidhi Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti that's based on the rules, right? So this rule-based karma, this rule-based activity is usually in the Shastras primarily given for the Brahmins, right? So like for instance, the whole Mimamsa Shastra is all mostly, about sacrifices. And what the rules in the Vedas about sacrifice, how to perform a sacrifice and so on, and how these are to be carried out. So Agnihotra, and Agnihotra means a fire sacrifice. So Agnihotri adivat vihitam. So what is that? So for a Brahmin, Agnihotra Adi, these are all prescribed in the scriptures, Vihitam, prescribed. And Niyatam, so Niyatam means fixed, again, means like a question like Narake Niyatang Vaso, we saw this in the previous chapter. Eternal sometimes is translated as, but it means Yata, it's a past participle from Yam Dhatu. So like Niyama, Niyata is the past participle of Niyama, right? So Kshatriyasya Vihitam, Niyatam Vihitam. So the regularly prescribed dharmas for the Kshatriya is Yudham. So Khalu, Yudham Khalu. So verily, Yudham is the prescribed activity for Kshatriyas, just as Agnihotra is prescribed for the Brahmins. The vat suffix there is making it like. So, and now further on, so now this is also an important verse here in the idea of what he's saying. So tatatcha, that also, shatru prana, oops, again, I thought I'd corrected all these. I don't know what happened here. Right, so vihingsanam, that was actually the mistake, was all the way in the original printed text. I checked it out yesterday. So Shatru prana vihingsana rupam. Right. So now tat cha. So tat, the vihitam karma. So this is a karma here. So yudha really this is neuter, vihitam. But vihitam is an adjective and niyatam is also an adjective. So what are they? Why are they neuter? Because we have the word karma coming in here. So yudham kshatriyasya vihitam karma. You have nitya karmas, naimittika karmas. So this is a vihitam karma. So it's a prescribed activity. So that's why it's in the neuter. So now what is it? Tachcha, that activity is also, takes the form, rupam, of vihingsanam, violence to the life of the enemy. Shatru prana vihingsana rupam. 4 words in that compound, but this compounds ending in rupam are very common. So, I mean, we literally translate it as takes the forms, but that's right. So what is the form of this karma? The form of this karma is to do violence to the enemy, right? To kill them, in other words. So that's the problem here. So the Kshatriyas have an activity that is basic, that is naturally violent. Coercion is the monopoly of the state. This is something that is in the basic ideas of statecraft, modern statecraft. Coercion is the monopoly of the state. So that means that the Kshatriyas, the state means the Kshatriyas. So the Kshatriyas have a monopoly on violence. So violence is not allowed for other people. You can't take the law into your own hands. What does that mean? Don't take the law into your own hands. That means that you don't have the right to use the powers of coercion. Those are that is only the police, the army, the rulers. They're the ones who can make the rules and enforce them. That's the meaning of a kshatriya. So here he's saying, so the shatru prana vihingsana rupam, that's the karma of a kshatriya. And now what? Agnishtomadi pashu hingsana vat. Right? So here we have this vat, but the sandhi came with 2 ends. Before na, the ta changes to na. Right? So it's again a final T sandhi. You have to know those final T sandhis. Just talking about them here. Dharmyadhi yudhat shreyonyat. There were 2 final T sandhis there. Now here we have another final T sandhi. These are all somewhat difficult to recognize. So he says, pratyavaya nimittam. Okay, those are again 2 important words. Nimittam is particularly important here. It says that the nimitta means the declenching force, the immediate cause. right? They're not the cause. So nimittam is also the immediate cause, you would say. Nimitta karanam. It's a karanam, but it's nimittam is a karanam. It's a kind of cause. So it's a pratyavaya. So pratyavaya has a number of meanings. We have that coming up in another verse or two. And I look this up on the screen here. Where are we? Here. Let's go. Oh, Moni Williams is not on the screen. Let's just get him here. So pratyavaya. So pratyavaya. Whoops. Pratyavaya. So pratyavaya, decrease or diminution. So that's the word that we're going to use it for. So in this endeavor, right, there's no loss or diminution. That's where pratyavaya is going to come up in a few verses, about 7 or 8 verses down the road. But here what we mean is we could say that here means offense or sin or sinfulness, disappearance of what exists or non-production of what does not exist, reverse, contrary course, opposite, right? Annoyance, disappointment. So all these senses are there in the word pratyavaya. In other words, nothing bad will happen. Right? So here, pratyavaya, so let's call it sin for the time being. So it are not the cause of sin. So this activity of enforcing violence on the enemy, that this is Agnistomadivat Pashu Hingsalnavat. So just like the violence that is done to animals in the Agnishtoma sacrifice, it is not a cause of sin. Why is that? Ubhayatra hingseyam upakriti rupa eva. So Ubhayatra hingsa iyam upakriti rupa eva. Right? So rupa, now we have a feminine, so this is a compound word. It said all these words with rupa are bahuvrihis. So they take on the gender of the word that they're modifying or the word that they're standing for. So here the word is hingsa and iyam, that's the feminine pronoun. So iyam hingsa upakriti rupa has the form or has the essential nature. There's other words of saying rupa. You can say rupa, maya at the end, or you can say atmaka. These are all different words that are used to say that, or lakshana. These are all words that could be used. Let's say if I did hingseyam upakriti lakshana, it has the characteristic of being beneficial, upakriti, of doing good. Or upakriti maya, or mayi, upakriti mayi, that it means it's full of or pervaded by benefit. Or atmika, it is again like maya. So all these different words that come at the end of compounds, and they're very frequent in order to say to describe the qualities that are possessed by, or you could even say that tasya hingsa, what does it have? Upakriti rupatvam tasya. Anyway, the idea is in both these cases, both in the Shatru Prana Vihingsana Rupam karma and Agnistomadi Pashu Hingsana Vat, in both those cases, the beneficial thing is being done to the this activity of violence, the hingsa, is being done, has some benefit for the person who is on the receiving end. So killing the enemy in the battle, it has beneficial effects for the general populace, but also the idea is that punishing the offender is also beneficial for the offender. Now that's been a big problem in the modern penal system. We have prisons everywhere. Now the idea is to punish them just for the sake of punishing them for revenge. So that's not considered to be a good thing, that you're just punishing them for revenge. Of course, though, that enters into it because that's in the personality of the Kshatriya-minded person, and also Shudra-minded people. They have a desire for revenge. But revenge, as in the Bible, it says, right, that the revenge is mine, says the Lord. That that God will have revenge, or material nature will do the revenging. It's not really the activity of the individual to seek out revenge, but the purpose of punishment, dando damayatam asmi, the purpose of punishment is actually to do good, to actually reform the person who is being punished. So upakriti, that's upakara, upakriti. So hina yor deha loka yoho styagena divyayos tayor lobhat. Lobhat or labhat. I have to go and see that and check that one out. Anyhow, here it says the hina yor, hina means inferior. So hina yor deha loka yor. So the inferior body and world. Tyagena, so by, those are both dual, right? Dvivachanam, Shashti Vibhakti, Hina yor, Deha Loka yor. Why is it Dvivachanam? Because it's Deha Loka yor, so Dvandva Samasa. Deha and Loka. So by renouncing or by giving up the inferior body and world, so this is actually referring to the two things, right? The Kshatriya is giving up the body and world. I guess both of them apply to both, right? The animal is giving up an inferior body and an inferior world because they're going to the higher world, Swarga. And Divya Yostayor Lobhat. So lobha, I don't particularly like that word. I think labhat is probably the correct here, but I'll double check that. I looked at it yesterday and I should have, but I didn't think of it. I saw labhat and now I see lobhat, and so I'm seeing the correct form. There's probably labhat. So because of the obtaining of divine body and world here, because he's got divya yoho here, so that divya yoho, that dual, that dvandva samasa refers to the deha and the loka. So he gives up the inferior body and world and goes on to a higher or a divine body and world that refers to going to heaven for the kshatriyas, right? Because the yogi, and that's going to be explained. So aha chaivam smriti. So now he's talking about kshatriya dharma. So ahaveshu mithonyonyam jighansanto mahikshitaha yudhyamanaha param shaktya swargam yanti aparang mukhaha. Right, so that's just saying that the kshatriyas, they go to heaven. Swargam yanti. So here, what do we have? So we have, this is what is the mahikshita is the subject. Mahikshitaha. So that's plural. Mahikshit. So mahikshit, ruling the world. So the ruling the world, mahikshit, they mahikshitaha, swargam yanti. They go to heaven. What is this? So ahaveshu, in the battle. Jighang santo. So jighang santo is desiderative from han dhatu. That's we've had some forms of that already, I believe. Ghna, gnatopi madhusudana, right? Ghna. That's also, so gha and han are connected there. In this particular case, you have the sa and the reduplication ji. So it's a strange form, I guess, because hun from hun, ha reduplicates as ja. So in the desiderative, it becomes ji. So ji, gang, santo, and the s is always there. Jigyasu, jighangsu, desiring, one who desires to kill. Jighangsa, the desire to kill. So, ahaveshu mithonyonyam jighansanto mahikshitaha. So, desiring to kill each other, anyonyam, and mitaha is also mutually. So, this is, mutually desiring to kill each other in the battle, ahaveshu, in battles. The kings who are fighting, yudhyamanaha. So, yudhyamanaha is an interesting thing because it could be either, well, here it's atmanepada, or it could be passive also in either case, but let's just take it as an atmanepada, active voice. So yudhyamana param shaktya, so fighting with great energy or with all their strength, and aparang mukha, not turning away from the battle, right? So they go to heaven, right? So the idea is that they're trying to kill each other, so they're engaged in hingsa, and they're fighting with full energy. So that indicates the idea of ekagrata. And aparang mukha, that's also the idea of, so Arjuna is yudha parang mukha, so aparang mukha. This is what Krishna is trying to make him here, telling him he has to do his duty, not to turn away from the battle. So this is Manu Samhita. And here another one, this is the idea about the Brahmins. So this is the idea that, so he says they attain heaven because they don't turn away from the battle. They're not cowards. They fight with all their energy, trying to kill each other. That's the whole thing about the battle. But that if they die, or even if they don't die, they accumulate piety and eventually they go to heaven. Heaven here, of course, means that this is a material activity. It's the material heaven that we're talking about, but that's something that we discuss later on. Okay, so Yagyeshu Pashavo Brahman, because he was saying Sakamataya, right? This is talking about karma, Sakama karma. Yagyeshu Pashavo Brahman Hanyante Satatam, because material society is based on desire. Worldly society is based on desire. People want to be happy and prosperous in this world. And if they're somewhat religiously minded, then they're thinking about happiness and prosperity in heaven. If you look at the Christian idea as well, for the most part, but even for, in Vaishnavism, we're looking for that otherworldly happiness. We just have a certain restrictions that we understand about otherworldly happiness. So here, Yagyeshu Pashavo Brahman Hanyante Satatang Dvijai Sanskritaha Kila Mantraischa Tepi Swargam Abapnuvan. So this is also in the Mahabharata. This stands for 3. This is the, what parva is that again? I should know that. I forget the name of the parva. Right. It's a big parva anyway. You can see 199 chapters. So Yagyeshu Pashavo Brahman Hanyante Satatang Dvijai. So by the Dvijas, by the Brahmins, Pashavaha Hanyante, animals are being killed. Brahman here is a vocative case. O Brahman. Brahma is neuter, right? But if it's masculine, then it means a Brahmin. Like Brahma, Lord Brahma. So Brahman, maybe he's addressing Lord Brahma, I don't know. But probably not. He's probably talking to a Brahmin. So Brahmins are, the Lord Brahma is the representative deity of Brahmanhood. So Brahman is masculine. Brahman, Brahma, you know the difference. So Yagyeshu, in the sacrifices, animals are being killed constantly by the Dvijas, by the Brahmins. Sanskritaha kila mantraischa. So those animals are being Sanskrita, are being purified, or are being somehow or another Sanskrita. Means they are ritually purified by the mantras. So by speaking mantras. So this is actually the same thing as in Judaism and in you have that conception of kosher and conception of halal in Islam, that they say some prayers while the animal is being killed. That's the basic difference. And also, the American Indians, when they went out to kill animals, they recognized that the action of killing was not a good action, and so they would speak to the animal that they were killing and ask for forgiveness. So it wasn't just that they were killing for pleasure, but that they were killing for necessity, and that thereby they understood that their relationship with nature. At any rate, here, by the mantras, by the reciting of mantras, that animal is being benefited at the time of dying, and so it is not an inauspicious activity. So tepi swargam avapnuvan. So the animals that were thus, purified through the process of recital of mantras, they also attained swarga. They also go to swarga. So there's that going to swarga, swargam avapnuvan, and swargam yanti. Those where the similarity of the Kshatriya's activities and the Brahmana's activities are being stressed. So this is here. So when they die, the Kshatriyas who are dying, they're benefited. They go to heaven. And the animals that are killed, they also go to heaven. Evam nija dharmam aveksha. So now evam, in this way, you're a Kshatriya, so you have Kshatriya dharmam. So swadharmam or nija dharma. So you know this word nija. It means like it's swadharma, nija dharma. Those two words are pretty much interchangeable. So dharmam aveksha, seeing this activity, vikampitum. Now here he has, so we talked about this word vikampitum a little bit. That vikampitum, we already had betum in Vishwanath. And now here he's saying dharmat prachalitum. So prachalitum, abandoning here. It says chalitam, going away from, leaving. Pratishtati. Pratishtati means to leave. Prayanti means to leave. Prachalitum means to leave. That pra in these words with meaning to go, that usually means going away from here. Vichalitam, so vi also has that kind of negative movement. But anyway, you don't tremble, means you don't abandon your dharma. So nija dharma maveksham dharmat prachalitam. So you're looking at studying this matter. So what does studying this matter mean? Studying this matter means knowing all this, what you've got all over here. So by looking at it by trying understanding this, therefore you should not abandon your dharma. Narhasi. So yuktam. Now this word yuktam, I have a bit of difficulty with this. Now I think there should be I think that what happened here is that this nacha, this was repeated, and so some scribe thought it was unnecessary to repeat nacha. But my feeling is that nacha should probably be added here, because it's going, you see, he's got nacha. So yuktam means it's inappropriate, right? Appropriate. But what he says at the end of it here is that what you said was appropriate. But what you said, he's saying what you said is not appropriate. So there's a negative here that was lost. Oh my Lord, here another mistake got. I went and corrected it in the original and see. Let me see. Do I have still this Sanskrit here? E-T. Anti. And this one also. All right. So here you have Adina Antena. Oh, I didn't put the number in either. Okay. Well, that was so he's really referring to this entire business in the second chapter, in the first chapter, right? Starting with Nachashreyo Nupashyami. And again, another mistake. My Lord, there are a lot of mistakes here. I have to check the number here. All right. Okay, we're running out of time, so let me just try to get this. Let me try to get this all the way through to the end. All right, so he's referring to the entire Arjuna, most of Arjuna's argument from Nacha Shreyo Nupashyami, Hatva Swajanamahave, the killing my enemies killing my relatives in the battle. I do not see any Shreya. So the whole point was that he's talking about Shreya. So this is Shreya is coming up here. Kshatriyasya yudhat Shreyonyat navidyate. And then the next part was Narake niyatang vaso. So that was all here, the Swarga business here. So it's not Naraka, but Swarga that he's going to get. So in this entire argument, beginning with that and ending with this verse number is 40 something. Yudhasya papa hetu tvam tvayoktam. So that was not correct. That's what he's saying. It's not that you said that Yudha is full of papa. Then that's what you were saying. But that is not correct. So that's why I'm saying nacha yuktam. That nacha here is being, this nacha was from the quote, and this nacha belongs to this statement. Your statement is not correct. Yuktam just means correct. Yuktam. You can say yuktam to say, yeah, that's right. Yukti yuktam, that's logical. So ityantena yudhasya papa hetu tvam tvayoktam. You said that yudha is the cause of sin. And here we just said na pratyavaya nimittam. Here pratyavaya nimittam, not the cause of sin. So tachcha gyanad evetyaha. That was what you said was said out of ignorance. And so that's what he is saying in the second part of the verse, dharmyad iti. So what is dharmya? Dharmyam yuddhameva bhumi jaya dwara prajapalana guru vipra sansevanadi kshatra dharma nivahi iti. So yuddham, so war is dharmic. Why is it dharmic? Because by the process of conquering over land, right, bhumi jaya dwara, so you could say that, by enforcing the laws of the land or whatever it is. Here we're talking about, a question of, conquering the land, but you have to have control over the land, right? Jaya also here meaning control. Is what purpose does it have? What nirvahi, it brings about the kshatriya dharma, the kshatriya dharma nirvahi. It carries the kshatriya, carries the kshatriya dharma, which is prajapalanam, taking care of the subjects of the kingdom and serving the Brahmins. Eva maha Bhagavan Parashara. So he concludes with this quotation. So we'll have to just go through this quotation a little bit quickly. Kshatriyo hi praja rakshan shastrapanihi pradandayan nirjitya parasainyadi kshiting dharmena palayit. So the kshatriya protects the praja. This is accusative plural, right? Shastrapanihi is a bahuvrihi samasa. In his hand he has a weapon. So carrying weapons. Pradandayan, and also punishing, right? So punishing, protecting and punishing. So there should be a cha there. But it could also mean his cha is the praja, means the good people. So the bad people he is punishing. And nirjitya parasainyadi, and he's conquering the enemies, the opposing armies. And he is protecting in this way, in these three ways, he is protecting the land by dharma. So these are his dharmas. The kshatriya's dharma is to protect the people, to punish the wrongdoers, carry weapons, and to defeat external enemies. So those are the three activities of the kshatriya. And in this way, he protects the kingdom. All right, no more time. So we'll go on to the next verse. This was a second, I did this a second time, so I was a little bit, it was like going through it one time was good. I should actually do this every single time. But of course, it's a big time-consuming thing to have to do it twice. And I had a little, yesterday I was not able to finish I didn't record it, so we did the second recording. This is the second recording. I was going to do that recording yesterday, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I got absorbed in other activities in my more regular schedule. So today I have a little more freedom. So it worked out well, I think. And I think it was probably better this time than the first time around. So all for the best. Tout est bien qui finit bien. So we'll see you all on Monday. Jai Sri Radhe. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Sarve santu niramayah. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Purnam madah purnam idam purnat purnam udachyate. Purnasya purnamadaya purnam eva vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Jai Sri Radhe. Jai Jai Sri Radhe. Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam.